Hey, how's it going, everybody? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me perfectly, and we'll get started in just a bit as a couple more people show up. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Thanks for joining the stream. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually going to upload this document right here. So if you want to follow along with me as I use this to build my watch list, you'll be able to do that. So let's actually delete all the code down here. File, save as. And I'm going to upload this to Google Drive, and then I'll drop the link in the chat so you guys will be able to use it right along with me. Hey, Kasparov, good to see you. And also, if at any time, if you guys have questions or stocks that you'd like my opinion on, feel free to leave them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. Luis, how's it going? So let's upload this. And thank you everybody for joining me. It's great to be able to live stream and interact with you guys directly. It's so cool. It's new file upload. Okay, I've got the shareable link. So that is the link to the Google Drive version of this template. So this is the most updated list that I have, and make sure that when you're looking at this and when you're choosing stocks this week, that you focus on when earnings are, just because you don't want to be caught by surprise with an earnings report. So Kasparov wants me to take a look at InMode. That's definitely going to be something that we cover, but let's take a quick look right now. Let's go. So InMode, let's go to a normal chart. All right. So looking at InMode, I was thinking it was starting to really move up and gonna test this previous area of resistance here at 58.76. But the past 2 weeks have been pretty weak for InMode. It broke this downward trend line down here and was moving up very nicely. But then last week in particular, it really suffered with all the weakness in the growth stocks. And it is oversold at this time. You can see the stochastic is pretty low at about 25. And it's actually below the Bollinger Band. The low of the last day was below the Bollinger Band. So it is definitely dealing with some temporary oversold conditions. But I personally wouldn't make a move to buy any shares at this time. I think it really has to really prove itself, and at the very least overcome this 53 level here. Its fundamentals are still fantastic. Going over to the sheet, it's been number one for months now, and the estimates this current quarter are up 3,900%, which is crazy. Sales are up, return equity is fantastic. It's on the IBD 50 list. After-tax margins are fantastic. So really good fundamentally. Just you have to wait for that chart to set up nicely and meet one of your entry criteria. So that's my quick thoughts on InMode. Let me know if you'd like me to elaborate on any of that, but yeah, that's kind of my overall take for InMode. And welcome, guys. People are just showing up. We're gonna be covering kind of step by step how I make my watch list for the upcoming week. And I always start with fundamentals first. So the first step is I take the top 400 from this fundamental ranking sheet, which I've linked in the chat here. And then I import this into TC2000 to start looking at the charts. So the reason that I start with fundamentals first is because I think the stocks with the greatest potential to go on 100, 200% moves have great sales growth, earnings growth, return on equity, those type of characteristics. And so if we want to capture at least some of that with a swing trade or a little bit more with a position trade, you want to be focusing on the stocks that are going on these great moves. So let's paste this. And now that we have this group of stocks in a watch list in TC2000, I like to use the built-in scan features to kind of focus on ones that meet my criteria. And specifically, I like to focus on ones that are consolidating near new highs, tightening up on that right-hand side, and are either oversold or bouncing off of support. So by oversold, what I mean by that is have a very low stochastic at this time and potentially have a green dot, which is basically a stochastic cross where it was oversold and then the red line moves above the blue line. So that's kind of what I like to see. And the first thing that I do is I click this scan feature and we're gonna set a couple conditions. So first I wanna make sure that the stochastic is less than 80, meaning that it's not extended or overbought. I wanna make sure that's a yellow band stock, and I wanna make sure that the current close is over $12. Anything below that is subject to a bit of manipulation easily because of that low share price. And also institutions aren't as interested in those stocks because it takes a lot of money to, or you can buy so many shares that it's hard to buy a big position. So with that, we scan those 400 stocks and we're left with 115, which then I go through and look at manually to find characteristics that I like. And if you guys have any questions at any time, let me know in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. And if you're just tuning in, make sure that you say hello in the chat. And if you've got any specific stocks that you'd like me to look at any time, I'll be glad to give a brief overview of them, both from a fundamental standpoint and also looking at the actual chart and telling you guys my opinion about when I would want to buy shares. And before we truly get started, I do want to say that this is for educational purposes only, and anything that I say should not be your reason for buying or selling shares. I'm just an average investor, just like many of you guys, and I'm just sharing kind of my process. Hey, Chap Golf, how's it going? Good to see you. And if you're also new to the live stream, if you haven't shown up before, make sure to tell me as well. It's always good to see new faces. Okay, so now that we have 115 stocks to look through, the first thing I like to sort by is stochastic, because I like to go from low to high stochastic because bounces from lower oversold conditions are more likely to work. So let's sort this from bottom to top, and then we'll pan through and look at each of these stocks individually. And also another thing, once I find a bunch of stocks, a big thing that I'm interested at this time is the earnings release. So if a stock is going to report next week, I will most likely not buy it because I don't want to not have a cushion going into earnings. And this is because earnings, anything can happen. It can gap up 10%, but it can also gap down 10%. And the name of the game is staying on the good side of the risk reward relationship. And earnings is completely gambling. So if I don't have at least a 15, 20% profit in a stock, I won't hold through earnings. Ron, good to see you. Chap Golf, it's your first time, great. And Mark is asking where the data from my fundamental list comes from. So what I do is I go to MarketSmith and I use the export to Excel feature, and then I have my own algorithms which then create this ranked list. Excuse me. So that data is coming from the IBD database, but through MarketSmith. Dimitri, good to see you. Dimitri was one of my fellow TAs from Dr. Wish's class. Good to see you. So let's take a look at TTD. So TTD had a nice cup and handle pattern here, and I've been looking at it for the past couple weeks because I was looking for it to break through the green line and kind of top of this handle, just like it did. But then on the next day, it fell back into the base that it was forming on above average volume. So David Ryan would say that you should sell automatically 1/2 of your position if this is the case. And I think it still has to prove itself a little bit. This last Friday was an up day when the overall market was down, which is encouraging, but you're not seeing that volume coming in that's showing you that institutions are acquiring shares. Yeah, so Kasparov asked, can I make a video about how I make the Excel algorithms? I can for sure do that. I won't show you exactly what my algorithms are. I consider that proprietary, but I will show you how to do a similar thing. And I actually won't use the MarketSmith data for that because it is an expensive platform and not everybody has access to it. But the IBD stock screener, you can also export to Excel very similarly. And I'll show you guys how to use that to create a watch list or a fundamental list, just like what I do. Of course, Dimitri, no problem. And everybody watching, if you do me a favor right now, click the like button down below if you're enjoying the stream. And yeah, let's get back into it. So that was TTD, which is on my watch list still. So first, I will unflag everything on, let's go to the entire watch list, and then I'm gonna unflag all of these stocks. This is just so when I'm going through the stocks, I will flag the ones that I want to have on my overall watch list. So there we go. Now we can go back to the scan and go through one by one the stocks in this watch list. So TTG is near all-time highs. It had some Bollinger Band bounces this past the end of the week, and it's very oversold right now. So this actually is a pretty good setup, and I will be flagging that. I also like that it's bouncing off the 30-day moving average and how the Bollinger Bands are kind of constricting at this time. And at any time, if you guys have questions or stocks that you want me to look at, feel free to leave them in the chat. It gets a little bit boring and repetitive as I'm just going through all these stocks, and I'm going to try to tell you guys kind of my thought process as I'm going through this, but I understand that that might be not terribly interesting. So HMI, it's not near all-time highs, so it might have some some resistance going forward, so I'm going to move on from that one. Maxer, I had been looking at this. It is also not near all-time highs. ACMR, I really like this stock, really good fundamentals, and it had a green dot on Thursday, and I really like how it's constricting on this right-hand side. That's something that Mark Minervini really likes to see. If a stock moves up very quickly, he wants to see it consolidate and then really tighten up and constrict. So Maxer we already went through. Let's undo this and sort by stochastic again. Let's minimize this a little bit. So actually, before we really get into it, I do want to talk about kind of my setup here. So I'm trying to kind of minimize the number of indicators I have on my screen at once, just because I'm trying to train my eye and really focus on the price action and the character of all these different stocks. But the ones I do have is volume, and then I have the stochastic with an overlay of that of two different indicators. The first is, of course, the green dot, which is a stochastic cross. And then the second, well, actually, I've got two Bollinger Band indicators on here as well. When it's a blue area like this, that means that's under 25% of the Bollinger Band range. So that is just another sign that it's oversold at that time. And then the dot is when it fulfills the Bollinger Band balance requirement, which is when the low of that day or the previous day was below the Bollinger Band at that time, and now the close is above the close of the previous day. So those are the main indicators that I'm using, and I'm also using a 10-day moving average, a 30-day moving average, and a 50-day moving average, as well as the 15-2 Bollinger Bands. So Chap Golf is asking about the green line. So, excuse me. So I do have a video on the green line. Let's actually, I'll get that link for you in just a second. And the green line was not developed by me. It was developed by Dr. Eric Wish, who taught me about stocks at the University of Maryland. So what it represents is a new all-time high that isn't broken for 3 straight months. And I've got an entire video really explaining this in depth, and I'm getting the URL for you right at this time. And it's actually one of the my favorite videos that I've made. So, yeah. So there you go. That is the link to the green line video. And quickly, let's look at ENPH for an example, because it's a really good green line breakout, very clean. So you can see it was near all-time highs, and then it made a new all-time high. Kasparov, I'll get to your question in just a second. I want to give a brief explanation of the green line. So yeah, I really like the green line setup. It's great. So back here, actually, let's go to a weekly chart. So as a new IPO, Luis, I'll get to your question in just a second. So right here, as a new IPO, it formed an all-time high and rested for at least 3 months, actually a couple of years even, before it moved through this first green line. And really successful stocks, they'll continually, as they increase in price, form many different green lines and break through them as it goes up. In the video that I just posted the link to, I actually give the example of Apple, which had maybe 20 green lines so far. So just because something is has already broken through a green line doesn't mean its run is over. So what a green line is a new all-time high that rests for at least 3 months. So how you set it is you go to a monthly chart, you find a point where it forms a new all-time high, and that rests and then rests for at least 3 bars. So here it rests for way more than 3 bars. So you go to this point, click it, find the high, which is 1797, and then you go to your drawing tools and create a new line at that value, so 17.97, and then what I do is make it green. And then the green line breakout is when it breaks through that line on a daily chart and closes above it on above average volume. And you can see that ENPH did that just recently, broke through, and then it set another green line. And then going back to the daily chart, you can see that on this most previous green line, it rested from September all the way till now. And then on Tuesday, I believe, it broke through on above average volume, a very clinical green line breakout. So first, addressing Kasparov's. So the stocks class that I took with Dr. Wish, it's a class offered through the Honors College at the University of Maryland, and it's called Stock Investing and Financial Literacy or something like that. And it's basically, it's probably my favorite course that I've taken at the UMD. And in 16 weeks, we basically go through from the very basics about what a stock is, to learning about fundamentals, earnings, sales, everything that matters there. And then we also have an 8-week stock market simulation where we buy and sell shares through a simulation platform called StockTrack, and basically write our own rules, analyze which rules were effective, and then at the end create an entire report kind of summarizing our performance, our future plans with the stock market, and what we learned from the class and the simulation. So if you don't go to UMD, I don't think you can attend, but a really great class, and I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to take this class. And also the class that Dimitri and I were TAs for is a version of that class for a special group of students called Freshman Connection students. So it's basically the same class, just taught for freshmen only. So addressing Luis's question. So I think he's asking me if I have any success using MACDs, stochastic, and other indicators. I have had success with them. I don't really like the MACD, but it's all really personal preference and what you find useful and what helps you identify the trend in the stocks. So I really basically use what I'm showing on the screen here, and also the daily GMMA charts. I like to focus on as little indicators as possible, because looking at the movements of the stock is really everything that matters. And if you get used and train your eye to find these good setups that you like and are successful over and over again, that's what's going to make you successful in the long run. So SM asks, once it breaks out, I assume on a green line breakout, what is my strategy for stop and my initial target? So the green line breakout is, for that strategy, what Dr. Wish recommends is you wait for it to close under the green line before you sell, because often a stock will move up for a little bit, fall back, and maybe even dip below the green line, but then it will close above it as institutions continue to acquire shares. So he does not recommend, and I don't recommend, you sell until it closes decisively below that green line. And other than that, my stop loss strategy is really to move it up as the stock price increases in price. And I don't usually set targets. I hold as long as the trend continues to go as I expect it to. So let me know if that answers your question. For my stop loss management, I increase it once the stock has increased twice my average risk, which is about 3%. So twice that is 6%. So once ENPH would increase 6%, I would move my stop loss up to break even. And then after that, I would set it at a trailing stop of about 6 to 8%. Okay, so moving on from that, some good question, guys. Thank you. Continue to ask them if you have any. And I probably won't go through my entire weekly watch list and make it completely live in front of you guys simply because it would take too long. But I am going to go through my entire process step by step so you can kind of see how I do it and kind of apply it to your own trading. So next up, we've got Coop, which I think was on my watch list a while ago, and it's still not making a decisive move upwards through this line of resistance. So not going to be on my watch list. KBH is looking interesting. Is it near all-time highs? It is not. I always find it useful to look on the kind of big picture, put it on a monthly chart, look back through the entire lifespan of the stock, and you can see that KBH, even though it's trending nicely in 2019, it's nowhere near the highs that it set previously. And a big growth stock is going to continually set new highs, so this isn't what we're looking for. Glob is looking interesting. Let's add this bar here, and let's flag that. So I like the look of CMG here because you can see it's had 2 straight Bollinger Band bounces, and it's finding support at the 50-day moving average, which is historically where institutions like to pick up shares. So I really like to focus on the 50-day moving average and also on the weekly charts, the 10-week moving average. And one of my criteria for my setups is a bounce off the 10-week moving average. So CMG, I like the look of it. Let's flag it. And in TC2000, the shortcut for flag is Shift F. So actually, I should use that more often. There we go. So NEM, Newmont Corporation, let's look at the monthly charts. You can see that it's really basically gone nowhere during its entire lifespan. So I like to focus on recent IPOs from kind of 2016 onward, just because there's more possibility for growth because institutions haven't had time to kind of acquire shares. So Paycom, this is the kind of chart that we like to see. Started in 2014, has basically just gone up since then. So if you can just catch a part of this trend, you're going to make some significant gains. So Paycom, let's look at the daily charts. It did gap down strongly, which I really don't like. It was down almost 10% on the day on above average volume. Let's make this volume a little bit more prominent. So this isn't my style of trade, but if you're more of a long-term investor, this could be a buying opportunity. I'm going to move on from the stock, even though I believe it still has very good fundamentals. So QDEL looks pretty good on the monthly. It is near all-time highs and has made a really nice run since 2016. On the daily chart, it's still kind of going sideways, and actually it's probably close to a green line breakout. So let's actually set that. So which was the high? 77.63, 77.05. So 77.63. So you can see this was actually a failed green line breakout. It broke out and then really with 3 straight days of above average selling fell back through. So I'm not going to put this on my watch list because that green line breakout has failed so many times. A stock can oscillate just back and forth along this green line because it is a significant point of resistance. And really once a stock breaks through, you want to see a couple different days of buying afterwards. ENPH is an excellent example of this because after the initial breakout, you had 2 straight on follow-on days of also above average volume. Yeah, Kasparov, that's a good move. So going back to Paycom, what day did you buy Paycom? Was it on the breakout around here or of the kind of cup and handle here? So Mark asked, does TC2000 automatically show earnings report dates? So what I do is if you have it, you can add columns right over here. So what you want to do is press this button here, do add value column, and you want to type in next earnings. And then it will automatically make a column here with the estimated next earnings date. So I already have that, so let's delete that. Yeah, so you bought it on the handle. So that's a great move. That's capturing a good part of that. And you had about a 20% gain going into earnings. So that's always kind of a sticky situation because you can see that earnings can go terribly wrong. How I've been dealing with that lately is I've been taking at least half profits going into earnings. And if the estimates are up for that upcoming quarter and the year, I'll hold the rest through earnings and kind of deal with the results. But you can always play it safe and just take that good 20% gain. There's no harm in that whatsoever. So David, how's it going, David? He asked, what camera and mic do I use? So this is an AT20 USB mic, which is fantastic. And for my camera, my main camera, this is just a webcam, a Logitech C920 or something. But for my main camera, I've got a Canon 80D with a Sigma 18-35 f1.8. So that's my main shooter, which I also use photography. I'm also a photographer for the campus newspaper here at University of Maryland. But I can't stream with that because I can't directly connect it to the computer. So my setup for this is this microphone and then the Logitech. David has his own YouTube channel that you might want to consider subscribing to. He talks about financial literacy a lot, so that is one option for you. But I did consider the Yeti for my microphone, but the reviews basically said this was slightly better for the price range. So going back to it, let's go ahead with QDEL. So this is also a recent IPO. Well, we're actually just talking about that. So this won't be on my watch list. CG is, let's see, is it near all-time highs? It is not. So this will not be on my watch list. SSNC, you can see this actually isn't the most recent green line. So let's go ahead and put the most recent one in. 67.73. And let's make this green. Yeah, they are very expensive. The Sigma lenses are very expensive, but since I use it for photography as well, it kind of works out for me. And I made enough money from photography through the newspaper that it kind of justifies it a little bit. But the quality that you get out of the Sigma art lens, it's just fantastic. I've been very happy with this lens. I got it about 2 years ago. Definitely recommend it. So Chap Golf asks, do you scan for the green line breakouts or use the wishing well site? So currently I don't really scan for green line breakouts, but if I walk through my watch list and look through all the stocks like I'm doing now, if I see that's close, I'll add it to a watch list. Excuse me. And I've also written a Python program to look for green line breakouts. So let's actually open that up. Green line value loop. Let's save it and let's actually give it a run quickly. So let's quit this one. CLS, Python, GLV loop.py. So this uses Yahoo Finance to automatically calculate the green line breakouts. So if we did, let's do ENPH. So it's got to download the packages first, and you can see that it outputs the last green line, which was 3542. And there you go, 3542. So this does it automatically, and I also have a version of this program that you can input a watch list, and it will export an Excel file with all the green line values for all those different stocks. And that is actually my plan for my next Python for Finance video, is to show you guys how I created the program. So it's actually not super complicated, and you can see it's only 43 lines of code. but it's definitely a very useful program. And I'll have that up sometime either next week or the week after next. And I also want to make a video in the future about how to create alerts so that you would be able to set it to notify you if a stock is about to break through its green line. Okay, so Dimitri asked about Chegg, except not because earnings are coming out. It's still one to watch through earnings. I think the estimates are pretty good. So looking at Chegg, it does fit the conditions over here. Looking on the daily, I mean, this is very good. It's consolidating near its past green line. It had a green dot. I don't like all this volume coming in, though it didn't really change much in terms of value. So it's not the worst day in the world on this past Friday. Let's look at its fundamentals. So guys, if you're just joining the stream, I do have, if you scroll up in the chat, I've dropped a link to the sheet that I'm showing right now on my screen. So if you want to follow along with me and look up stocks that you're looking at, you can. So right now, Chegg is ranked number 48 on my list, which is very, very good. The earnings growth is there. The sales growth is there. Return on equity is there. Everything looks very good. The estimates for the current quarter are only up 16%, which isn't great. But like you said, Dimitri, I mean, its earnings are, I guess, just tomorrow. So yeah, nothing much to say. I wouldn't personally risk buying any shares tomorrow. But it'd be interesting to see how it acts tomorrow. So Luis asks, is it feasible to have the green dot in TradingView? Definitely. I do have the code somewhere for that. And if you go to, if you look through my channel, I've made a couple of different videos on TradingView. And I think in one of them, I have a link to a Google Doc with the Pine script necessary to make that. So give me 1 second. I can try to look for that. Yeah, so I just found the document that you will need for the code. If you scroll all the way down, you'll be able to find some TradingView Pine script code that will allow you to put those on there. And if it doesn't work or you're having problems with it, either message me on Twitter or just leave a comment on my YouTube channel, and I should be able to help you out. So let me know if that works, Luis. Yeah. All right. Let's keep on going. So we were at SSNC. We're on a daily chart. And I don't like how this is acting recently. A lot of tech got hit this past Friday. But overall, still a pretty good chart. But I think it's not gonna be on my watch list for the next week. Let's go to monthly. Let's set this green line. $115.84. So I like Axe's recent run up, but since it's so far from its past green line, I won't be considering it for my watch list. So Pass, I like everything with Pass. It's got earnings 219, so this will be on my watch list. The high was at 61.10. So you can see that SYNH had a nice green line breakout on Wednesday the 15th. And since then, it still hasn't closed below this green line. This is kind of what I was talking about. It may fall right back, but it's never closed decisively below that green line. So you might want to, if you're interested in this stock and if the fundamentals are good, it could be a possible setup to buy kind of a bounce off this green line. So look for early next week for a movement upward from SYNH. It's also oversold right now. You can see that's in the low of its Bollinger Band range. And yeah, let's actually take a look at the fundamentals. So SYNH. So it's number 392. So it's kind of on the lower end of these stocks. The earnings should be coming up soon. Let's look. So 220. The earnings growth isn't great. Sales growth isn't great. Return on equity isn't great. And the margins aren't that great. So nothing too crazy about the stock fundamentally. The chart looks pretty decent. So I'm actually going to take this off. Well, I didn't even add it to my watch list, but the chart is looking good because it's breaking into new high ground. And you can see it's been consolidating for a long, long time. So the longer the base, kind of the more explosive the potential move upward. But I won't be putting this on my watch list for this week. This is a nice looking chart. It is a kind of older company, but it's been acting nicely. And let's draw in the most recent green line. So take a look at this high, 67.81. And I'm going to go through a couple more stocks and then kind of move on to the next step in my process. But I would kind of go through every single one of these 115 stocks and then kind of check their fundamentals and see if I actually want to keep them on my watch list. EHTH. I like the look of this. It's above its last green line. Well, actually, it looks like it set a new one, which is the high 111.69, 112. It would be really nice if in TC2000 they would allow you to, actually it's 112.22. If they would allow you to automatically put in green lines. I mean, I've got the values in Python ready to go, but there's no way to kind of talk to this program. It doesn't really have an API that I can use, so that's too bad. So you can see EHTH had a nice green line breakout after probably earnings. Actually, I guess it was on news because its earnings are still expected, but then it closed below the green line. But it's kind of hung in there, broken through again, and had a green dot on this past Friday. So I will actually add this to my watch list and keep on going. So just like with TC2000, I don't think it would be possible to automatically add the lines into TradingView. I haven't tried it, but I don't think there's a way at this time. It would be great if they could interface with Python somehow, but I don't think so. Hey Matt, how's it going? Let's take a look at AMD. AMD, it's on my radar. It's going to be on my watch list, so let's actually flag it. But I've been watching this for a while, and I had shares from this day here and then sold half into earnings, which I talked about previously on this video. But Since then, it kind of dropped down and is kind of consolidating this move upward, and just kind of hanging around this previous green line. Actually, is this a green line? Let's go ahead. Oh, it is. It is a green line. Okay. And it hasn't yet made another decisive move upwards, but it's been very tight for about 4 weeks almost. So this is definitely one that I'm watching really closely, and it's showing some promising signs. It's showing support here when it gets oversold, and it moved upward on Friday on above average volume, which is good to see. And its fundamentals are very, very good. So I really like to focus on the top 30, which I post on Twitter, and AMD right now is 8th, which shows really strong growth. The earnings this past quarter were up 300%, which is fantastic numbers. And you can see the estimates for the current quarter are also up 217%. And the sales are up. The return on equity is very, very good. So really fault the fundamentals or the chart processors. Some really impressive stuff that I don't really understand. I'm just a mechanical engineer. I'm not a computer engineer. But from what I've heard from my friends who are more aware of kind of the gaming scene and the computer world, they've been doing some really groundbreaking things. So I know if I built my own computer, I would definitely pick up a AMD product. So overall, can't fault AMD. It's definitely one that I'm going to be watching. I would like to see it move up into new high grounds on above average volume, as I always say. Yeah, I think, yeah, for the new gaming consoles, AMD is going to be the kind of basis for all that processing power. So definitely AMD is a company to watch, and it's probably a lot of people's long-term holds. Yeah, let's take a look at NVIDIA and see what it looks like. So first looking at the monthly charts, so it's actually been consolidating since before this year and still hasn't recovered from the highs of that. So let's put in a green line, 292.76. So yeah, I mean, NVIDIA has been doing really well since this past June. It is not quite as strong a chart as AMD because it's still not quite at all-time highs. But just like AMD, it's been consolidating for the past 4 weeks and seems ready for another move upward. NVIDIA graphics card found. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean that whole AI machine learning, that's going to be a huge growth sector in terms of tech. So if your computers have great processing power, that just makes that whole process that much easier and that much more powerful. Neural networks, all of those fields are going to be big. I mean, just in our engineering schools, we're learning a little bit about that. But I know the computer science people, they're really focusing on that in their classes, because that's where all those different industries are going. I mean, you can use that stuff to really do everything. They're finding potential cancer solutions with artificial intelligence and neural networks, a whole lot of capabilities. I'm really looking forward to the advancements of AI simply because I think they could help solve a lot of our problems. So yeah, all those graphics cards, all those processing companies, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, there's going to be a lot of potential for new products, and that contributes to sales growth and in turn higher stock prices. So this is definitely a sector that I'm going to be watching closely, and it seems really promising to me. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through this preliminary step, I think it's time to move on a little bit. So after I would have gone through all these different stocks, I would then copy and paste these to my watch list. So copy to watchlist 29. Then we go over here and we've got all the stocks that pass kind of that first barrier. Oh, awesome. You work in this space. That's great. Um, Great. Yeah, I want to learn more about it. I'm going to be taking some kind of like some online classes. There was a technical elective that I wanted to take, but it just didn't work out with my schedule. But I'll be looking for ways to learn machine learning and AI, and also how to apply that to stock trading. So yeah, I think it's a really fascinating field. So getting back to it, so let's say that you've done all that, you've picked out all the stocks that meet that first barrier. Now what I would do is would go step by step down these names and check their fundamentals, because even if they're in the top 400, they might not actually have that great numbers. Excuse me. So looking at TDG. So it's number 68th. Good IBD ratings, decent earnings growth. I like 48% change last quarter in terms of sales. That's really good. Return equity wasn't available from IBD. Decent margins, and you can see that they've already reported earnings. So this is a good stock to watch. And checking back to its charts, everything looks good. So this will be on my watch list for this upcoming week. Now looking at ACMR, I know it's number 8th, I think, or yeah, it's number 10th. So really good IBD ratings, except for EPS, which sometimes happens. Great growth this past quarter. I really like seeing an EPS surprise of 165%. And yeah, Chap Golf, yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, and best of luck next week. Have a great day. All right, so ACMR, everything looks good, so we'll keep that on our list. Let's look at Glob. There we go. So it's number 50. Good IBD ratings. Sorry, you probably can't see this. Good IBD ratings, decent EPS growth, decent sales, return equity. Okay, after-tax margins. So this is pretty good. I don't like that its earnings are 213, which is just, yeah, that's this Thursday. So I will keep this on my watch list, but if it was going to report, yeah, if it's going to report this week, I can have it on my watch list, but I will definitely not be buying shares until that earnings report comes, because there's not enough time to build up a good kind of cushion. So looking at CMG, let's go ahead and look at CMG. So it's number 233. Really good earnings growth, decent sales growth for a big company. Return equity is fantastic. Not the best margins, but overall solid numbers from CMG, so this will stay. Let's look at PASS. It's number 16th. Not the best return equity at all, but good enough fundamentals to stay on the list. Let's look at EVRG. Nope. EVRG. So number 384. Not the best earnings at all. The estimates for this current quarter, though, are up 350%, so that's very good. Decent numbers. I like seeing this estimates here. It is probably due for earnings 220, so that is, let's see, when is 220? So that is next Thursday. So yeah, this will stay on the list, and let's put in this entry line here, this resistance line here. And for this one, what I would be looking for is a green dot bounce. So you can see how the stochastic is curling down now. The green dot happens when it stops curling down and the red first crosses the blue. And you can see with the price data, what that corresponds to is the first kind of change in momentum of the stock. And you can see that after this last green dot bounce, it increased 12%. So that's exactly what you kind of want to see with the green dots. And next we've got EHTH. Number 260, not the best EPS numbers. You can see the composite rating is pretty weak at 68. No real earnings to speak of. You do have the sales increasing, which is good to see, and not the best return on equity or margins. So this is an interesting one. It's either this one or EDU that is kind of the China stock, with the China education online stock. But I think this is the eHealth or something. So I will keep this on my watch list. And finally, AMD. I'm also gonna have my watch list. We already checked the fundamentals on this one. So whatever stock doesn't have good enough fundamentals, I would kick off this list. And then the next part of this process is to go back to this scan list and let's make this bigger. Undo the scan, and we're gonna get rid of everything in here. And what I would then do is take only the top 50 from this list and then go step by step through each one of these stocks, which are probably the best of the best fundamentals, and go through manually and check their charts. And then whatever kind of strikes my fancy with that, I would also add to my watch list. So that is pretty much my process, and it's kind of what I do every single weekend. I think the best thing you can do is look at as many charts as possible and manually go through all these different options and make sure they have great chart patterns, whether it's a cup and handle, stochastic cross, whatever your kind of entry criteria is. And you also make sure that it's pretty good fundamentally, either by earnings growth, sales growth, return equity, those type of things. So does anybody have any further questions before I end the stream for today? I'm not quite sure why there's such a long delay on the stream. I will be looking at that, but yeah. Yeah, Ron, thanks for tuning in. I would like to do a live stream every single week if possible. It really depends on my homework schedule, whether I've got some big projects coming up. But if I've got the time, I'll definitely try to do this every single week. Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for coming out, asking great questions. It's great to interact with you guys directly. If you follow me on Twitter, thank you so much for doing that. If you're subscribed to me on YouTube, thank you so much. And if you're not yet, make sure you hit that button down below. Paul Jones, where can I find the list of the week? So after I go through this process, I'll post it on Twitter. As I usually do, which is, and my Twitter, let's go ahead to that. Whoa, there we go. So my Twitter is at Richard Moglin. And also one thing I do want to show you guys is I made this list with my 15 favorite followers who always give me great ideas and are willing to help other traders out. So if you haven't yet subscribed to this list or haven't followed these people here, I definitely recommend it. There's a lot of knowledge out there for free on the internet, and these people are willing to help you out. I've learned a lot from them, and I always see some great chart ideas, some great stocks. Just make sure that if you get ideas from them, that you check it through your own process and make sure it meets your trading rules. Yeah, thanks everybody. See you guys later. Dimitri, Jack, Mark, Luis, thanks for coming out. And with that, I'm gonna end the stream. So I hope you guys have a great week, and best of luck.